Hi, Sam. Well,
Hi, Claire. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing good. I might be starting a new job, God willing, soon. And who knows? Maybe things will start looking up. But yeah, I interviewed for a new job, and hopefully I'll get accepted soon in the month of
Mhm,
July. But
mhm,
didn't work out with the prior job because of all sorts of complications I don't have to get into. But
mhm, mhm,
anyway, things are if developing. They always are developing and progressing towards the finale. And I've been
mhm,
posting a lot of a, videos that are of an economic nature, economic analysis and commentary.
mhm,
And it seems like they're all pointing in the same direction, both for
mhm.
the EU and both for the United States. And you're familiar with Mario Eneco, the Brazilian guy that does his show on his channel Maneco.
I'm afraid I don't watch that. No, I don't. But
All right.
I imagine they would be predicting economic collapse.
No, well, he's being more detailed about it, more specific about the catalyst being a European sovereign debt crisis that
Mhm,
can't be swept under the rug anymore. That's where it's going to flare up. That's where it won't be able to be swept under the rug as it was over the many several years.
mhm,
He's a bond analyst, and also he was a trader in the city of London, and he has his finger on the pulse of what's happening with Europe's bond market, especially the Italian one. He's saying keep a close eye on the Italian bond market, the 10-year, that it won't be put under control from by a Christine Lagarde, that's in charge of the European Central Bank, that implemented the policy again of what she called the containing a fragmentation in the European bond market. Basically, just implementing the same quantitative easing, buying the bonds on on a official basis, whereby the European Central Bank and the EU are purchasing the bonds of countries that are in crisis because their rates are shooting to the sky and nobody's buying their debt. And so, in order to stabilize those markets, keep them from fragmenting, as she calls it, they've implemented quantitative easing in the European bond markets again with undeclared. They're not allowed to openly officially declare it, but it's on a it's
Declare
only
what? Sorry.
that they are purchasing the bonds of distressed nations that whose bond markets are in crisis.
Which
You
is
know,
what? EU countries.
the same countries as before: Italy, Greece, Portugal, Spain. The Italy is now the focal point because
So
they're
you're saying that the EU is buying their own bonds?
yes, it's called quantitative. It's the definition of quantitative easing, which they said they stopped, which they said that policy has ended. But now, because the interest rates on the Italian bonds rose, spiked so intensely, it created a panic, and Christine Lagarde held an emergency meeting of this European Central Bank and the government officials who are in charge of stabilizing a crisis situation that develops. And they said, we're stopping the fragmentation. That's just another fancy word of everything falling apart as far as having a bond crisis and then a market crisis. One is connected to the other. Okay. So if
Okay,
you
just to be clear about quantitative easing, because it's a term that comes up repeatedly, and I don't think
right,
we know it's the electronic creation of money, but
yeah,
well, not everybody
well,
knows how
it's more than
how
that.
it's
It's
done.
technically the government or the central banks buying their own debt, buying the debt of the sovereign country that they're trying to stabilize their currency and stabilize their debt markets. It's more than just printing money out of thin air. It's actually buying debt where nobody else would buy the debt. That's why Europe has been in negative interest rates for several years now. It's because they don't have the same luxury of printing money out of thin air as does the Federal Reserve, having the dollar be the world reserve currency status for now. They took advantage of that to the fullest, to the point where it's broken the system over there. And Europe is more fragile because they cannot as easily just produce credit, limitless credit, as do the Americans with their world reserve currency status. The euro is on par with the dollar. I mean, it's just a few cents off. It was 96 to 97 pennies to the dollar, or the European cents. What do they call the euros in cents? Euro
Yeah,
cents or euro
it's in cents. Yes.
cents? Okay, so it's 97 euro cents to the dollar now. It's almost on par. And Europe is going to be the flashpoint. That's what my rabbi said. That's what all the analysts said. If it's going to start anywhere, it's going to start in Europe. So Mario was correct today and yesterday, and many videos prior, to say that the crisis will begin in Europe first, with Europe's banking systems and Europe's debt markets. That's the flashpoint. America, because of its privileged or unique position as having the world's reserve currency status, by the skin of their teeth now, still can get away with creating unlimited amounts of debt to stabilize their bond markets, stabilize their currency, and stabilize their stock markets. For now, it's very precarious, because what happened recently is that the rumors became policy. Putin and the BRICS nations openly declared that they are going to compete with the dollar and not use the dollar for trade in commodities and for trade amongst themselves. Okay, they are going to openly compete against the dollar as the world reserve currency. So the ruble is also at this point be strengthening. It's 50 rubles to the dollar today, when it was at the start of the Ukraine war, when Russia's currency and stock markets were attacked. It was a financial attack as well, as not just sanctions. They had to shut down their markets, shut their banks down, and say and stabilize their currency. And they were smart enough to know how to do that, where it spiked to 140 rubles to the dollar. It was inflating, it was getting to hyperinflationary. It was going in the direction of hyperinflating. It was a financial attack. It wasn't just a media war, info war. Their currency was under attack, and they knew it, and they found a way to stabilize it. Now it's 50 rubles to the dollar, and they are counter. It's a counter attack now. Now they're using countermeasures. Now they're on the offense, and they don't care. Putin said it, and he declared it to the world. We will put you in your place. We know how to take care of you. We're not afraid of you, and we will put you in your place. You are not all powerful, and you will not dictate terms to us or to our economic partners. And India is becoming bold and courageous enough to say the same. And China and other South America, South Africa, Brazil is still somewhat friendly to the United States with Bolsonaro, but he is also in line with Brazil is the first letter of BRICS. Okay, so they're forming their own alliance, their own economic and commercial alliance against the dollar and against the Western power structure, and it's having its effect. The illusions and the routines will not last that much longer in the West. The flashpoint will be in Europe. I was listening to Mario again this morning. He said it's just putting a band-aid on the wound and sweeping it under the rug, not fixing anything, not resolving anything. It's just buying more time. And he believes it's this summer that it's that critical, that it's reached the meltdown phase. It's reached the critical phase where if they continue doing this out in the open, whether declared or undeclared, the system is already broken. It's just not visibly broken or officially declared to be broken. They are still trying to maintain the illusion of calm and routine and normalcy, and it will blow up in their faces soon enough. And so, why am I speaking about this? Because people know I've been an advocate of having this be resolved one way or another. Trump was not capable enough of being 100% honest and open about it, and laying everything on the table as far as all of the truths, the unpleasant truths that he should have settled with the American public and settled with the world. But he would never do that. That would be like falling on his sword, and he would have made himself a persona non grata as far as getting reelected as a president. Many people would have respected him. Many people would have admired him, but he was not capable of doing that, and he had too many people keeping him from being fully honest with the world, or the American people, the American public. Not just on the fact
Could I stop you there? What are you saying Trump should have done that he didn't do? Could you say that
well, I
again?
said he should have settled with the world and settled with the public and told the world and told the public that America's bankrupt, that its fiat currency system has been maxed out. It hadn't during his administration, and it still had more life in it by way of manipulations, by way of all the maneuvers that they are making. But these are desperate maneuvers that even avid people that are interested in economics and finances realize that these are the final stages. These are the last desperate stages of buying more time and keeping this sclerotic system alive, the system that's on its last legs, that's in in a what do you call it, in the emergency room, in critical care, on a life support. Everybody that's half asleep, half awake, but just keeping some tabs on things knows that that's what's really going on, and that's why we're having a lot of instability, and society is reflecting the fact that this system is on its last legs by way of all the horrors that we are witnessing. It has a direct link to the fiat currency system, to the debt-based system, to usury, to the system, running out of time, running out of life, running out of steam. It's the degenerative stage. So Trump should have, been honest and settled. He tried to say, he said it in general terms. He alluded to it. Maybe
Oh,
he,
did he? When did he say allude
well,
to?
during his campaign, during the race, he was being much more brutally honest about America's financial and economic troubles. But
Oh, how
not.
did he put it? I'm afraid I missed all that.
It was more than 5 years ago. So if I recall correctly, he said America is bankrupt. He said the
Aha.
economy,
He
the
actually said
economy.
that, the B
Yeah.
word.
Yes, yes, yes,
Right, right.
yes. But he did not go into details. He maybe was insulting the intelligence of the American public, or maybe trying to be as dumbed down as possible, or be as simple as possible, and not be overly complex, and explaining exactly what that entailed. The fact that
Mhm.
America is bankrupt. They, even back before the race began, people were fully aware that just on its face, before it became official, 30 trillion in national debt, $30 trillion national debt, which can never be repaid. There, on top of that, there are future future obligations in the hundreds of trillions that have to be paid. There are the derivative markets, the dark, the shadow banking system, the dark finances that is also in astronomic in hundreds of trillions, close quadrillions. People don't really know. The whole system has been, tinkered with or like
Mhm.
leveraged to such an extent that when it blows, it will be so catastrophic that there is no salvaging it. There will be nothing to salvage. It will be like a thousand ton, a megaton
Hmm.
nuclear bomb going off that will devastate everybody. That's why it
So,
is
so
called. Yeah.
I mean, to help people understand it a little better, could you give in terms that ordinary people might understand about what what Europe is doing in terms of what buying its own debt? Well,
Yeah, yeah.
how?
I'll take advantage of the internet and we'll find the article about Christine Lagarde having an emergency meeting and discussing how to control the bleeding or stop the fragmentation, as she called it, in the bond markets, especially in the Italian bond market. Uh, Here, I'll use some keywords and we'll get the
Mhm.
exact article and we'll get all the details.
Right.
Fragment.
I just thought I'd mention to you that I knew somebody who said, well, he only just discovered that debt can be sold to people. So I could owe you money, but you could sell the fact that I owe you money to somebody else, and that
Well,
person would be
let's read the article so we can be clear, not confuse people about it. This is from the 16th of June. This is
okay.
recent. This was when the policy was implemented. It's from Reuters. Okay, I have ECB's Lagarde vague on how and when to use a tool to stop the spread. Okay, here. ECB's Lagarde vague on when, how anti-spread tool may kick in sources. This is from the 16th of June. Here, I'm going to
Could
put
you
this
post
in
it
the
in
yeah,
post it
I'll
somewhere?
post it in the private chat, and there's another one as well. And these are not vagaries. They want to make it sound vague, but this is a here. Here it is again.
Mhm.
European Central Bank. This is from CNBC to create new tool to address fragmentation risk and temper bond route. Create new tool. This is all horseshit language cover ups for doing the same thing they've been doing for a decade now, which is basically, buying the bonds of these troubled countries.
Mhm.
Bailing them out when they said that it would no longer be doing that. Open those two articles. Let's read them. They just like to use this technical language in order to cover the fact that they're implementing quantitative easing or the
Mhm.
same policies that they've been that officially they voted on not to do again, not to implement again, which is called bailouts. They're bailing out the debts of these troubled countries, the pigs, Portugal, Italy, Ireland, Greece, Spain,
Mhm. Mhm.
and what will the ECB do against this fragmentation? Okay, this is all the same stuff. There's a lot of articles about it. A statement after the ad hoc meeting of the ECB governing council from the European Central Bank itself. They put out this a statement. Okay. Uh,
Mhm.
yeah, because the bond rates were skyrocketing, they were spiking, and they had to do something. Otherwise, you would have had a credit crisis beginning in Italy that would have infected the banking system. There would have been contagion in the banking system, the Italian banking system, and then it would have taken down all of Europe's banks and the entire European banking system. All right,
Mhm.
it's that critical. And they're making light of it by using technical language. Read to us from CNBC or Reuters so people can get an understanding of just
Yeah,
the.
I'm behind a paywall with Reuters, I'm afraid, because
All right,
I've
so
read.
open the CNBC one. So
Mhm.
and we'll read it. I mean, people don't understand the gravity of what can happen, you know. And you can read it. That no, that's from the yeah, yeah. Okay, go ahead, read that one. Yeah, you're
Okay.
that's the one.
European Central Bank to create new tool to address fragmentation risk and temper bond route. This is June the 15th. Um, Key points. The European Central Bank announced Wednesday that it plans to create a new tool to tackle the risk of Eurozone fragmentation. Uh,
Fragmentation, but you know what that means?
no, I was going to ask you.
It means contagion. It means that they were talking about specifically the Italian bond market losing control of their rates. Their rates shot up from like 3.2% to 4.3, 4.4, something like insane like that overnight over a few days. And it was a threat to the to the Italian banks and to the Italian bond market. At that point, they could have had a financial crisis that would have created a credit freeze in Italy. Their banks would have shut down. All right, that's what they were facing in
Why
2008.
is it bad in Italy? I mean, were there any particular
Their
circumstances?
banks are in the worst condition out of all of the banking you find in all of Europe. Their banks are always on the precipice, on the edge, and they always need to get bailed out. They are in more trouble than any other country now in all of Europe. Where Greece was in that situation in 2011, 2012, Italy's in that situation now. So now this is a quiet bailout. They're using this language, oh, create new tools, temper the bond route, stop fragmentation. Fragmentation means contagion, not fragmentation. Contagion. If Italy was to go down, it would take all of Europe with it. If Greece did not stop their bleeding, it would have caused a contagion in Italy and France and in Germany. And basically, just replace the word fragmentation with contagion. You know,
Right, and the circumstances came about um, because of the euro, because no EU country has its own currency. So
right?
if any country goes, it'll drag the rest of the EU
Yeah,
nations who are part of the
the banking
eurozone
system is
down.
yeah, the banking system in Europe is interdependent, interconnected, and it would later, if the European markets and the banking systems would get into a point of credit freeze, in no time at all that would cause contagion in in the United States and the rest of the world, but especially in the United States because of the interdependency and all of the leveraged investments they have amongst themselves, all the trading they do, and all the lending and borrowing amongst themselves that they do, interbank lending. It would take down the whole system within a week in the United States as well. So Mario from Brazil, the financial expert, the retired bond trader an analyst that worked in the city of London, was referring to this a phenomenon and saying that this was another a sweeping under the rug the mess or another band aid. Keep on reading the bullet points there. There's a couple more
Okay.
after it comes after the ECB.
Uh, right. It comes after the ECB surprised market participants by announcing an emergency meeting to address higher borrowing costs for many European governments. The pandemic has left lasting vulnerabilities in the euro area economy, which are indeed contributing to the uneven transmission of the normalization of our monetary policy across jurisdictions, the central bank said.
Okay.
The European, shall I continue?
Yeah, go ahead. Continue.
The European Central Bank announced Wednesday that it plans to create a new tool to tackle the risk of Eurozone fragmentation in a move designed to assuage fears of a fresh debt crisis. The decision comes after the central bank surprised market participants with an emergency meeting to address higher borrowing costs for many European governments. Since a gradual process of policy normalization was initiated in December 2021, the Governing Council has pledged an act against resurgent fragmentation risks. The ECB said in a statement. The pandemic has left lasting vulnerabilities in the euro area economy, which are indeed contributing to the uneven transmission of the normalization of our monetary policy across jurisdictions, it added. The comments reflect the recent surge in bond yields over the past week or so. After a regular policy meeting last week, the ECB suggested a more aggressive policy tightening but failed to deliver any new measures to support highly indebted nations in the bloc. Perhaps you will explain the bond market and
It
the
talks about it
concept of bond
specifically about
yields.
Italy. There's an explanation. Continue reading. It's very specific. Yeah,
Okay.
I'll read it. This sparked some nervousness among money managers about financial fragmentation and led to an increase in bond yields. Italy's 10-year bond yield crossed the 4% mark earlier this week. That's from the 15th of June when this article was published, with one economist saying these levels, quote, could eventually turn into a problem, unquote. That's putting it mildly for the South European nations, for the South European nation, for Italy. To tackle these concerns, the ECB said Wednesday that it will, what was that? Reinvest redemptions from its emergency bond purchasing program. That's quantitative easing, referred to as PEPP. They can find a fancy term for it, but in putting it simply, that's just re-implementing a QE in their language, in their terminology, in a flexible way, and it will ask its team to accelerate the completion of the design of a new anti-fragmentation instrument. Isabel Schnabel, a member of the ECB's executive board, said in Paris on Tuesday, our commitment to the euro is our anti-fragmentation tool. This commitment has no limits, and our track record of stepping in when needed backs up this commitment. European countries faced materially high borrowing costs in the wake of the sovereign debt crisis back in 2011. Some of the imbalances have been addressed, but there are still concerns about the region as a whole, notably because it has one monetary policy for 19 different fiscal positions. Italy's 10-year government bond yield drops following ECB decision. They stepped in to save the Italian bond market because it would have caused contagion. That's just that they replaced that word with fragmentation. If Italy was to go under, it would take the whole of Europe down with it. If their banking system was to go under, everything would go in a domino effect.
Mhm.
The yield on the 10-year Italian bond traded lower on Wednesday morning, shortly after the ECB announced its unscheduled meeting. The yield extended losses during afternoon deals to trade below the 4% mark. Okay, but continue. Go scroll down. In currency markets, the euro was higher. No, 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 no. Okay, this is less important. Let's see. Flexible PEPP reinvestments might buy policymakers a little time, but the new anti-fragmentation instrument that the bank is working on will need to go a whole lot further. And there is no guarantee that they reach a consensus on such a tool at the next policy meeting in July. So we could see spreads widen further before a new tool is in place. Spreads meaning rates will also become spike again. Between the short term and the long term, there will be a much greater spread. It's instability in the bond markets. Mario Centeno, an ECB governing council member, has said that faster monetary policy normalization is a risk that cannot be ruled out. According to Reuters, the central banker added that the pace of interest rate hikes would be gradual. They're caught between a rock and a hard place, to catch 22, just the same as the United States and the Federal Reserve. All right, it's just how much longer, how much more time can they buy? How much can they keep this illusion alive? How much can they keep this dead horse, apparently, alive? Uh, it's all a matter of whether they make you know any visible mistakes that are too great, that actually cause a crisis to begin. Right now, it's just like giving dead patient a blood infusions, or adrenochrome or what have you. Just like they're just like shooting Biden up with adrenochrome, or drugs, or stimulants, to keep that Walking Dead puppet functioning enough to pull off the act, or the illusion of having a functioning president, commander in chief. Biden is the perfect analogy for the European financial systems and the American financial systems. They have put a zombie into office that requires regular blood infusions and injections of all sorts of drugs, just to keep him quasi functional. All right,
Hmm.
so it's the same thing goes for the European bond markets, stock markets, banks, and same applies to the United States. Okay, it's a sclerotic, walking, talking, dead zombie that constantly needs to have work done on it, in order to not have it be visibly, deceased in the eyes of the world. But the BRICS nations realize, and Iran is amongst them. And I'm no friend of Iran, and I'm not fond of the Ayatollahs, and I have no love for the government of Iran. The Iranian people, I'm sure a lot of them are very good people, nice people. I've met a lot of nice Persian rug salesmen when I was in New York,
Hmm.
and I met a lot of nice Persian non-Jews, even not just Persian Jews, Persian non-Jews, and they're I don't have a grudge against them. It's a lot of them don't hate Israel, and they don't hate the Jews. It's their sick, insane government that's bent on having a Shia Islamic caliphate rule the Middle East. They have these, grandiose. What do you call it? The self delusion, sort of like what do you call that when like Hitler or Napoleon, when they illusions of grandeur. All right,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
and that's what they're actually, that's what they're that's what drives them. But anyway, it's like that they're not the main point. Basically, this new coalition of countries, or this new bloc, is not afraid of the West. It's not afraid of Europe. It's not afraid of NATO. It's not afraid of America, and that's why,
Because they
to
think
say that.
the West is a dead man walking.
Yes, yes, yes. They know. They don't think they know. You think they don't have. It's not about even having to spies on the inside, giving them all the scoops, all the all of
It's
the.
obvious to any observer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You don't need to be a covert informant, or a spy in within the European banking systems, or European Central Bank, or European governments. It's all laid out on there, right in front of everybody's eyes. There, it's in critical condition. They all the flowery language, all the technical language, all of the deceptive language that you find coming out of the Fed as well, is not working on anybody anymore.
Well,
It's like
anyone can deduce that it is unsustainable.
right. And so
Mm.
this block, it's not necessarily innocent. It's got the same Western elites involved in it. You've got Goldman Sachs bankers, J.P. Morgan bankers. You've got Western bankers
Well, who
also.
else?
yeah, involved in building the BRICS, alternative banking systems, alternative transactional facilities, alternatives to SWIFT.
Mhm.
They're there. They've got their fingers in. They've got their hands in it. Who knows what kind of fruits it will bear, but it will be an open. It is an open challenge to the West, and so you have conflicting interests in the West itself within the commercial banking systems and within the big investment firms and commercial banks and the big boys. There's a lot of them. They have self interests there that they want to stay alive, and so they'll move from being a parasite on one system to being parasites in another system that they think they'll have survivability or continuity. They have no loyalties. They just they want to continue riding high on the hog, and it doesn't matter whether it's a Western hog or an Eastern hog or a BRICS hog. They're involved. Their hands are in it. And I'm sure China, Russia, Brazil, and all the other countries that now have joined in, India, and all the others, don't mind having a seasoned veteran bankers that understand these systems, implementing alternatives for them within the new BRICS, block, within the new competing alternative system. For me, it just means that the West is condemned, and it's condemning itself, and that it has to undergo a reset, regardless of whether the World Economic Forum agenda for the Great Reset is implemented the way they want it implemented, or the way it's just going to, by the forces of nature, by the forces of weight and gravity, eventually taking their toll and forcing a reset. All right. It does. So, one way or another, there is going to be some sort of calamity, a financial calamity, and we've been talking about it endlessly. And so,
Mhm.
it's in people's, it's in people's, it's in their back. It's in the back of their minds. It's something that most people realize it cannot be avoided. It cannot be, like you said, sustained. It cannot be, put on life support forever. You cannot have blood infusions inserted into this Frankenstein monster that just
Mhm.
has to die sometime.
So,
So, yeah.
could you just explain this idea of the debt ceiling? So every time there's an act of quantitative easing, they raise a debt ceiling. That's what it's about, is it?
Basically, but now they found a workaround against the, they found a workaround to their own policies that they voted on, and that they implemented. They put into they made policy that's like quantitative easing and bailouts was not, it's supposed to be allowed anymore when the banks get into trouble, or when government sovereign debt gets into trouble. So they call it something new. They call it PEPP, and it's a workaround to the debt ceiling, and it's a workaround to quantitative easing. It's a
Hmm.
special
Hmm.
tool. You understand? This is their
Right.
language. This is their and you studied law. You passed your bar exam. You understand this kind of legalistic. A fine print or the micro print. It's not fine print or micro print. It's in the same vein. It's in
It's
the same.
putting a gloss on it. It's a
Yeah,
euphemism for something.
right.
Yes. So
Very
um,
good. Yeah.
I, I'm also thinking in legal terms about how this is going to pan out, and I was early asking you about how would you compare what these European banks are doing to that is analogous to what somebody is doing. I mean, somebody, an individual who is really debt indebted is doing. So I can
They're juggling.
imagine this. Hmm?
And they're juggling. They have a lot of power. They have a lot of ability to juggle. a lot of instruments new instruments that they create, and they have the ability also to, like you said, sugarcoat and gloss and put a lipstick on a pig, and get and buy time, just like it says here. This Jack Allen Reynolds, senior Europe economist at Capital Economics, said in a note that the decision fell short. It only buys a little bit of time. Now they're talking about July being another flashpoint, another inflection point. And this is what I'll repeat what the quote:
Okay. Yeah.
flexible PPP reinvestments might buy policymakers a little time, but the new anti-fragmentation instrument, in quotes, that the bank is working on will need to go a whole lot further, meaning they'll have to buy the debts of these troubled countries, like Italy specifically, that is facing a sovereign debt crisis because their banks are in critical condition and they can't be constantly bailed out. And now it's not just the banks; it's the debt markets of the government. It's the sovereign debt of Italy itself is going bad. Nobody wants to buy it, and the buyer of last resort is the ECB or even the Fed. You understand? So it's a game now of basically how much more time can they buy before things blow up. All right, because things were blowing up.
It's just an endless series of borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, and
Yeah,
and just going just round and round to as many people who will take your credit.
yeah, or yeah. And the same applies to the United States. The United States is obviously
the the
much
the
bigger.
the the last resort.
Right. And but because they've got the world so addicted to debt, it's not just them. Their special sort of gift to the world is that is that they export their inflation to the rest of the world because of the status of the dollar. So you understand. So that's why the BRICS nations, the BRICS bloc, wants to get off of the dollar. They don't want to go down with the ship. They don't want to go down with the Titanic. They want to have an alternative for themselves before they get damaged, and they know
Mhm.
that they're going to get damaged. This system will damage everyone, But if they jump ship and go on the life raft and and develop their own thing, maybe they can mitigate the pain, mitigate the tragedy of what's going to happen to Westerners in Western countries. That being that there's going to be credit freeze. The banks will not just confiscate; they will freeze people's accounts, and people will
Mhm.
not have access to their money. And
Mhm.
at the same time, inflation will run amok, and it will be a fucking disaster. And
Mhm.
people will lose their minds, and a lot of people will throw themselves off of tall buildings.
Mhm.
You know
Wall Street
that
crash all over again.
it's
What's the
not
situation in
sovereign.
Israel?
No, no, this is the conclusion. This is a sovereign debt collapse and crash, meaning the money itself goes bad. It's not it's stock markets. It's not a stocks or the instruments you find in stock markets that trade. These are the actual, the sovereign debts, the money itself, the currency itself, the debt itself goes kaput, goes boom, kaboom. It's not just markets. It's a sovereign, official
It
government
will
debt.
be economically paralyzed.
Yes, yes, yes. Putting it mildly, yes.
Mhm. What is the situation in Israel? What does your finance minister say about these things?
They know this stuff. They're just as much insiders as everybody else. We've got Rothschild bankers here. We've got people that are insiders here. They know. My rabbi said this too many years ago. He said people, when once this happens, they will be crawling on the floor like ants. They will be in such agony, such pain that they will be crawling on the floor. This it coincides and comes together in parallel with messianic revelation. This is a sign of messianic revelation. This is a global phenomenon. So Israel will not be spared financially, and our banking systems will not be spared either. The only difference is that we have the Savior, the Messiah, the Deliverer, God's Deliverer here in Israel, And this is where we go our separate ways. We're on separate paths in this position in this belief. Israel and the Jews living in Israel will be taken care of by by God's decree and by the force of the Messiah, by the decrees of the Messiah. We will not have any want of anybody, want of food, want
Mhm,
of anything. Israel will be taken care of.
mhm,
Basically, there won't be any shortages of food here. People will not go hungry here. But the finances will be a correction. The fact that
mhm,
people's bank accounts will be destroyed here, the fact that businesses will be out of commission, a lot of businesses will go under. My rabbi said a lot of like the businesses where you have restaurants that make a non-kosher food or cook up non-kosher food, they'll go bust, they'll go bankrupt. A lot of the media, the commercial media here will go under, it'll go bust because it transmits nothing but filth and confusion and rancor and conflict. All of them will go under. Israel will also undergo a major transition in its day to day, and people here will receive a terrible humbling financially. But Israel,
mhm.
because we have the Messiah here, because it will be messianic revelation, we will have no want of food. We will have no want of energy. We have our own energy, our own gas. But as far as the nations will be humbled. My rabbi said, by the decree of the Messiah will speak, and the nations will have to deliver. They'll give us any food that we're missing or lacking, and yeah, they'll be under the heel of God, under the heel of the Messiah. The world will
So
be in.
you have your own energy supply secure, do you?
Yeah, yeah, natural gas. We have tons of it.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, we're supplying gas to Western Europe now by way of Egypt. Yeah,
Oh, I
we
didn't know
we
that.
transfer a lot of the natural gas to Egypt, and Egypt has its own pipelines flowing to Greece and Italy, and so a lot of Europe's natural gas is coming from Israeli, yeah, fields, natural gas fields under the ocean, under the Mediterranean. So yeah, but as far as not just energy, the thing is, what my rabbi said is that people in Israel will go bankrupt. They'll be crawling on the floor in pain and agony. Why? Because they refuse to understand and believe that we are in the messianic process, the process of the final redemption. It will be their correction. It will be the price, that the retribution, or the penance that they'll have to pay by their pain and by their suffering for being negligent, for being oblivious to this whole entire process, for not listening. The Jews in Israel will also undergo some sort of a major judgment of their own, but it will be financial. It won't be that their lives will be threatened. It won't be that they'll be pursued by people that have it in for them, that will blame them, that will want to kill them, that death will be pursuing the Jews of the diaspora when this arrives. They will not be losing their homes here. The ones living abroad will be losing their homes and their cars and their businesses, and they'll be under hot pursuit, and the Gentiles will not be willing to compromise. They will not be in a forgiving mood, and that's all. This is all God's will in order to drive all the Jews back. It's called the final ingathering of the exiles, the hard way. It's not
Mhm.
by way of the mind, not by way of reason, like I said before, not by way of a faith and a submission to God and an act of faith, realizing what God wants. This will, when it arrives, it will be by force. It will be by basically God's judgment and anger towards them, focused on them. And but it's not that the Jews of Israel will be completely sort of like uh, given a pass, or will be impervious. There's a correction coming to the Jews living in Israel as well.
Mhm.
It will be mostly financial. It will be mostly commercial, the routines, daily life activities. Will also be ground to a halt. There will be sort of a paralysis. My rabbi said it will last here for about a week or two at the most. Everything will run very quickly. But when the Messiah is functioning in public, out in the open, a lot of Jews that are faithful believers, that are humble people, will realize it's a very small price to pay in order to have a God's direct intervention and a messianic rule in Israel, and messianic rule eventually will spread out for the to the rest of the world. The nations will want the Messiah to rule over them when they see what's going to happen, in order to stabilize the world. All right, but Israel will be the first one to experience the sovereignty and rule of God directly by way of the Messiah. And Israel, the Jews of Israel, will be taken care of. There will be no want of anything and no want of any nation. No need for groveling or making negotiations or a dependency on anybody or anything. It's God Himself, God's hands working through His chosen deliverer, His conduit, the person who He will be functioning through. That's the Messiah. That's the Mashiach. Okay, so I'm obviously not concerned. I'm sitting pretty, and I'm in full faith and realizing I've been given enough corroboration and proof and evidence of it throughout the years. So that's why, if anybody's asking, I've had people, friends in America, saying, "Well, there's no room for all of the Jews once they come to Israel." Oh, there's plenty of room for them. Israel will also expand. It's not the greater Israel policy. It's just by God's decree, Israel will expand. So that woman in Lebanon, she's you know what? I'll give her credit. She's partially correct. By against their will, and whether they like it or not, certain portions of Jordan, certain portions of Lebanon, certain portions of Syria, Israel will expand outward. And also the Sinai Peninsula is coming back. It's going to be part of Israel again. It sounds like I'm flouting, or I'm sort of like making these grandiose statements, or I'm like being whatever. It sounds like to maybe to that person, that woman, or whatever in Lebanon, or whoever's listening, who has had in their heritage hundreds of years, and sometimes some with the Christians it's been 1,700, 1,800 years of the ability to gloat in our face and say, well, you believe what you believe in is nonsense and it will never come to be, and we'll also guarantee that it won't happen because we'll get in the way. Well, nobody's going to get in the way of God. Nobody's going to get in the way of the Messiah. This is the process we are in now. I'm transmitting the message from my Rabbi Nir Ben Altzi, in his name. These are his words. And so I'm in full faith, and I'm very confident that this is where we're headed. The Jews will ingather. A large portion of the Gentiles living in Israel will pick up and leave out of fear for their lives. Some will stay, some will remain. The ones that will remain will be servants here. But what my rabbi said is that they will get fair, salaries. They will be paid for their labor. They won't be slaves. But they will build a lot of the buildings and homes for all of the Jews that will ingather and be here in refugee camps, in refugee tents and shacks, or whatever where they live for 2 to 3 years, whatever amount of time they have. That's a correction for them as well, humbling for them as well, that they'll have to live out in the wilderness in tents and in shacks because they were too stiff-necked to come here of their own free will, with their dignity intact, with their money and their possessions, and to make a life for themselves in Israel, despite all of the objections, despite all of the reasons that compel them not to want to come here, all their arguments. A correction will be dished out to them as well, and it will be deserved. Nobody will pity them. None of the Jews here will pity them. They'll blame them. And in fact, the Jews that are buying their time and dragging their feet and just playing, waiting to get the evidence and proof of what God has warned them would come, they will be blaming themselves. Nobody will pity them. No Jew in Israel will pity them. and no, they will if they start pitying themselves, they'll only have a harder time once they arrive here in adjusting. They'll have to swallow all of their pride and blame themselves for their fate of losing everything in the diaspora and starting from scratch here in the wilderness, in tents and in shacks. That's going to be their fate. And you know what? Eventually they'll be happy with the fact that they're in Israel, no matter, regardless of their having lost everything. They'll make peace with the fact that they were stupid, that they were stiff necked, that they were arrogant, that they were struggling with God Himself, struggling against God's will over several decades. I'd say since the founding of the state, but it's gotten more intense and it's intensified. And they want to hold on to their wealth and material gains in the exile and in the diaspora. It will be totally taken away from them. It will be utterly devastated. There'll be nothing left of it. It will be their humbling. It will be their correction, and it will come instead of, God forbid, what had happened 80 years ago, a Holocaust, which God does not want. But their correction will be a humbling, a painful judgment that will eat them up for a very long time. But the only problem is that they know that they are responsible, and that they will have to take responsibility, and they will blame themselves. So nobody will pity them. They shouldn't pity themselves, and nobody among them will pity one another. They'll all have to bite the bullet and accept the blame and the guilt. The fact that this hasn't arrived yet is, God's will, and they can mock, laugh, and gloat. I don't see them mocking, laughing, and gloating. I mean, I listened to Rabbi Mizrahi. I heard him repeating a lot of the things we said here about Adam Green. He's listening to the language. I can pick up on it very quickly that he sort of internalized it and regurgitated it, spoke it again. All right, so he's listening, and he knows. I'm sure he's conflicted. He's told a lot of people in American Jews or Israeli Jews that they should return if they have the means. They should return. So he's not against it, but he's not. It's say it again. The
Well, I
saying
suppose
is
he's
like,
concerned about his children, whom he probably fears may not adjust to the
yeah,
harsher
well, yeah, my
conditions of
cousins too.
Israel.
Right. It's the same with my cousins and my family over there. That's what I've been hearing from my uncles that have many children. A lot of my cousins, boys and girls, some of them are married. Some of them, they already have grandkids. My uncles, so they're making these practical considerations, practical concerns of theirs.
Yeah, because
Uh,
I remember Rabbi Mizrahi saying, well, these Jewish Jews in Gentile homelands, they have become kind of white and soft and a bit stupid, or words to that effect, I think he was
yeah,
saying.
they've got
And they'll
they
be completely, kicked around by the Israeli children.
Right. Well, that's a credible concern, but that's a lack of faith. That's the fact that they're not taking a leap of faith, and they don't believe in what I'm saying, and they don't believe in what my rabbi is saying. Basically, yeah, you'll have to bite the bullet with the Israelis while you're here, trying to adjust to their mentality and to their rashness and their abrasiveness. But it won't take that much waiting before everybody here is humbled, including the Israelis. They'll be a sledgehammer will fall on their fucking heads just as much as a sledgehammer is going to fall on your fucking heads. Why don't you just be humble? Don't make these practical, considerations, weighing what's more preferable. If you commit to your faith, if you take a leap of faith, and don't consider the problems you have here with the Israeli mentalities and the Israeli, they can't get one over on other Jews in Israel. That's their problem. But even in the diaspora, in the exile, you have people like Adam Green, and you have other Gentiles over there that they can't get one over on those people anymore. They've grown wise. They listen to what the Jews have to say. And so they sound off, and they provide their thoughts and opinions on Christianity no longer working, and Jews can't take advantage of Christianity in order to have an easier, more comfortable life amongst the Christians. All of that is imploding. And in fact, they're not thought leaders, and they're not cultural leaders anymore in the West, not in Europe, not in America. And in fact, they are being I wouldn't say enslaved, but they're under the heel, they're under the yoke of modern liberal progressive intersectionalism, that's not Jewish, that's totally goyish, that's Gentile, that's anti-religious, that's anti-moral, that's completely devoid of ethics and morals. It's just pure sickness, and they're the subjects of that system. And they think that somehow things will improve for them, or somehow their condition is still better with the status quo that they're living under than coming here to Israel. They'll soon find out that it'll just totally degenerate to the level that it's not just the visible behavior, it's the financial systems will degenerate and implode in on themselves. This is what they're waiting for. This is the proof, the final proof they need. This is it's called missing the exits. They wait. They are waiting to miss the exits to be proven wrong. In the meantime, they'll just drag their feet, behave as though nothing's going to happen, and they'll mock and criticize and judge, and maybe they'll look for every a sort of weakness or weak point in my arguments, or maybe if they look into they like to look into people's personal histories or their personal lives in order to try to find something to criticize, to something to judge, in order to delegitimize the speaker or the person providing the information, the message. And again, I have no concern about your finding points in my life, in my background, that will seemingly delegitimize me or make me less believable, because it's not about me. It's about the message. It's not just my message. It's primarily my rabbi's message, Rabbi Nir Ben Artzi. So
well, I believe that you believe what you're saying. You're not, some scam artist.
Yes, and my rabbi said this. He said this about people, and I knew he was talking about me versus other people. I mean, he said people can gauge genuine, clean, well-intentioned, sincere language coming from a person that doesn't sound as professional as, let's say, public speakers that are paid public speakers, or people that have an agenda. He was talking about me versus the rabbis in the diaspora, or rabbis that are not in support of this information.
You're a very good speaker, I think. You speak.
Well, I worked on it. I mean, it's years of observing, listening, and putting it into practice. And so maybe I feel maybe I was born to do this. This is like the ultimate goal in the end times that I was meant to fulfill, to transmit this message through you, through others. It doesn't matter who's listening and how many people are listening. I feel that I was guided to this point, to this place where I have to put this information out with the abilities that I've attained for myself through my experience, and also through my mastery or control of speech or the oratory skills. I picked it up from, who? I'll admit it. I picked it up a lot of it from Alex Jones. He's a good speaker. And other speakers, I used to hesitate and stutter more. I used to have to focus and collect my thoughts more and think more about what I wanted to say, and it used to come out with a lot of and stuttering and everything. But now I'm very focused and very clear, because it's not that it's clear on its face, obvious to so many people. To me, it is. But it's easier for me. I feel more at ease and more confident in my ability to relay this information and make the connections, and especially to add on the significance, the ramifications of the messianic process being associated, being connected to all of the facts and figures and the details and the articles and all the subjects that we're talking about. And I'm going to talk to John and Vaughn later on today, and I'm going to show them. Look, the natural catastrophes have returned. A lot more
Who is
volcanic.
Yvonne?
Vaughn is from Kentucky. He's a prepper. He's like what would you call like you've seen Vaughn Helton
Oh,
on
yes,
the
yes. I thought for a moment you were talking about a woman called Yvonne.
not Yvonne Vaughn Helton James Vaughn
Right,
Helton.
right. Yes, yes. Of course, I know him.
But
Yes.
anyway, so it does require confidence in speech and oratory skills and knowing the facts and being confident in the
And
information
belief
you're
in the
telling.
message.
Yes,
I've never doubted for a moment that you sincerely believed in what you say. That I think a lot of people don't. I mean, a lot of people just like talking and don't care if they're talking nonsense as long as they take up your time.
correct. I'm not one of these people. I feel that it's important to repeat and translate and my rabbi's lectures and messages and put my 2 cents in, contribute, invest. It's for me. It's I'm investing my time and my energy and my focus in repeating these messages because it's first of all it's required of me. It's what he asked that people do, and it's also a benefit to me in these end times to be a contributor and to put in time and effort into letting as many people know and having it be as clear as possible for as many people, not just Jews and Gentiles alike, to merit being a part of the redemption and being amongst the first in line in what's called the first cycles of redemption. Because a lot of people are not going to like what's going to happen. You can only imagine who's going to like having all of their money go kaput, having all of it burned in like relatively overnight very quickly. And again, a lot of the analysts are saying a lot of the stuff will happen over a weekend and people will be caught off guard.
Mm,
They won't be able to go to their banks once the banks are supposed to open at the beginning of the week. All this stuff will happen in the shadows, in the dark of night, or in a time when people are not expecting it. It will be sprung on us.
mhm,
With very few people looking at looking or sort of like very few people anticipating it, very few people being prepared and ready for it. I mean, nowadays, you can't say just how many people are fully convinced of what's going to happen, have taken precautions. Some people are smart enough. Some people are paranoid enough. Some people are not trusting enough of the government. And nobody. How can you trust Biden and his administration? How can you trust Europe's leaders now and those technocrats? They're losing believability. They're losing their trustworthiness. So a lot of people are becoming more, alarmed, and they're lending an ear to this kind of information. How many are acting out and preparing? I don't know, but it's God giving the world fair warning. Prepare yourselves, get ready. I didn't spring on this on you overnight, but when it arrives, it will be a surprise that you won't expect and you won't anticipate the day. It'll just happen. One day it'll come and poof, kiss your ass goodbye, kiss your bank accounts goodbye, kiss your normal life goodbye, kiss normalcy and routine goodbye. You're going to be in a crisis situation.
mhm.
Basically, this is a repeat warning. It's worthy of having it repeated, so people will take it seriously. They'll internalize it. They'll come to make their peace with it. That this is not just fear mongering. This is not alarmism and fear porn. It is what it is, and because it's been repeated over so many years, and there's so much proof of it now that it's staring everyone in the face. It is about what's called a due diligence. You must do your due diligence. You have to take responsibility. You will have no pass. There is no out of this. There is no free pass. There is no getting out of this for anybody. This is why it's a global event. And it's on the level of such a grand level that it is a divine event. It is prophesied. All right. and Adam Green with his skepticism, and his buddy Al with their skepticism and how they operate, and people like them how they operate. Well, it's the fucking Jews and their agenda, and they're pushing it on us. And they've been working on this for 2,000 years. That's the ticket. That's the ticket. All right, so you know they're
So
retarded.
dumb.
They're retarded. They're
Yes.
stupid. But they are also working for what God has in mind for the Jews of the diaspora. These people need to, rear their heads at the Jews, to be intimidators of the Jews living in the diaspora, to basically convince them, look, you're not going. There is no reasoning with us. There is no reasoning with people like us. We just don't want you here anymore. We're sick of you, And even if it's Nick Fuentes saying, well, we don't want the frickin' Jews in the Supreme Court anymore getting in our way. It's because of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And he made a good point. It's like a liberal, progressive, atheist, lunatic, activist that kept the abortion going for 50 years in the United States. And
Mhm.
it took her death and replacement in order to overturn Roe v. Wade. And he's right about that. So, but his approach is that he's a Catholic, and he's a committed Catholic, and he's a believer in that nonsense, that horse shit. And there is no room once those people are fully in charge and control, which they will be after the crisis. There will be no flexibility, and there will be no maneuvering, no room for liberalism, or for Jewish progressive liberalism, or for having their communities not be bothered by Jesus mad Christians and Catholics. At that point, they'll be in a frenzy. Jesus, Jesus, at the end times, oh, you fucking Jews, you have to accept Jesus or get the fuck out. Get the fuck out. You either accept Jesus or get the fuck out. That's how they're going to behave. So, yeah, that's what the Jews have to look forward to.
Hmm. Well, I don't
And
think the Gentiles are about to accept Jesus.
no, they won't. But you'll have all these fanatics over there that just
Mm.
will lose patience for the Jews, because their big gripe, their big the sticking point they have is that it's in the book of Matthew, or I think it's in Matthew. It's the basis of their messianic expectations, or their messianic the demands that their gospels make of them, is that the Jews must accept Jesus in order for Jesus to return and have a second coming. So it's very frustrating for them that the Jews don't accept Jesus. All right. So out of that frustration, there will be less tolerance for the Jews once we have this calamity. There'll be less tolerance for the Jews once the American dollar goes up in smoke, or the banking system freezes up and the credit system freezes up, and you'll have supply chain problems, and you'll have problems with food, and you'll have
Mhm.
looting. The furthest things from the minds of those people that will be in panic mode, and in survival mode, is the fucking Jews have still not accepted Jesus. But because of the resentments that have built up, they won't have any patience for the Jews. Not the ones that are in crisis, and not the ones that, let's say, want a Christian revival. They'll just have, well, maybe the Jews can stay here just as long as they don't get involved in our politics and economics. That's what they're saying now, to seem, compromising, to seem like they're willing to give some leeway, or give the Jews some room to whatever. But they don't mean that. Once they have a crisis situation, they will lose all patience for the Jews, and there will be people pursuing the Jews, blaming them for what had happened. So this is the God's final sort of instrument. If you want to talk about tools and instruments, that's his final instrument of basically forcing the ingathering of the exiles that has been prophesied for the end times, for messianic revelation, and for the final redemption. All of the Jews will be ingathered. They are fighting directly, they are struggling directly with the will of God, making excuses. Oh, our children won't adjust. Oh, the Israelis are such fucking assholes, which I don't disagree with them on. Oh, the Israelis are such fucking abrasive assholes. They're so arrogant. Oh, and it's hard to get along with them. And we don't speak their language. Oh, and whatever. You know, nobody will fucking care at that point. You will be running for your lives. Just acclimate this information. You internalize it. Having you know trying to make sense of it now is much easier than it was 10 years ago, because these circumstances are staring you in the face. They're more believable now. You could at least see 5 or 6 steps ahead. It's not that much of a leap to see where this is going. And also because you can compare it to 80 years to what had happened 80 years ago or 100 years ago. All right, it's almost one for one. There's so many parallels, and this is also God making it easy for you, because you're not stupid people. You remember the past. You remember the circumstances that led to the horrors and the tragedies that the Jews didn't expect or anticipate, but they ended up suffering. And you can connect it to the present. Okay, you don't have to be that much of an abstract thinker. You don't have to be that much of a genius. All right, but I give the Jews credit for not being stupid people. The only thing that's bothering them is that they've gotten too accustomed and too comfortable to their material comforts and their material wealth and whatever, all the gains that they've all of their material gains. You just don't know when to give it up, when to surrender it, and that's why you are testing God, and you are testing whether He's serious with you or not, and He will prove to you just how serious He is with you, and you will know that it is Him and His hand that has brought this down upon you, because you are struggling against Him directly and willfully and consciously, by refusing to return, and by holding on stubbornly to what you should no longer be holding on to. He does not want you there anymore. You will not defeat His will, and no excuses you make will be uh, credible, or will buy you more time. For whatever amount of time you did successfully manage to buy by your stiff-necked resistance and stubbornness and excuses and whatever, God gave you enough time, leeway. He also was very lenient with you. He gave you as much time as He could possibly give you. But that's it. All the signs are there. All the signs have been provided. We've gone through a cycle. We missed a cycle that should have happened in 2015, 2016. This cycle will not be passed on. We won't be. God will not be passing on this window of messianic revelation that He will push the button on, or He will activate. He will not let you delay Him any further. That's the message. Okay, and so now we're on the verge. And so that crazy, that I wouldn't call her crazy, I call her like a bitch in Lebanon, that can grow up, complain and gripe, and she has her beliefs, and what she's hearing here, it pisses her off. I tell her, listen, nobody cares anymore. This is where we're on the verge, and I'm explaining to you what the terms and conditions are. You can ignore them. You can poke fun at it, mock it, joke, and try to put it down, what have you, with your snarky, snide comments. If you're in the comments section, I'm not there. Maybe I'll see it later. But all I have to say is, not the Jews and not the Gentiles will delay this process 1 minute longer. There is a set time. There is a set date. And what the point was, that that woman, the Lebanese woman, says, "Oh, he's so enthusiastic. Oh, he's just itching for it. Oh, he's got a hard on for it. Oh, he's like John. Oh, I inject like a syringe of end times liquor or juice into straight into my veins. Oh, it feels so good. The end is here. Yeah, that's right, motherfuckers. I'm looking forward to it. You can all fucking choke on it, you know. And anyway, that's where I'm going to end it.
Okay.
And for those that are worried and concerned, just get yourself prepared. Get yourselves prepared mentally, physically, financially, what have you. Try to get out of the cities, or just be in the state of mind where knowing that this is where it's headed, and you'll make it. You'll be fine. You'll make it through. Save your money if you can, outside of the banks. Gold and silver and financial assets or what have you. It won't save you. I mean, you'll still have to fend off against a lot of violent brutes and people that will act out. If you're in the big cities, you'll be under the threat of spontaneous violence erupting. From a lot of desperate people that will be just on the streets, making a mess of things. So, yeah, it's a fulfillment of Ezekiel. Let's just leave people with this prophecy, and it's a good place to end this episode, this segment, because again, the gold and silver won't be your salvation, but it's there, for once things reset, and maybe it'll protect some of your hard-earned labor that the cost for your labor won't be completely lost. Ezekiel, gold and silver. This is the beauty of the internet. It's just a few keywords and boom, I got it. Gold and silver in the streets. In the streets. Yeah. Okay, give me a second. Here it is. Beautiful. Ezekiel 7:19. Let's read it. Ezekiel 7:19. They throw their money into the gutters. Their hard-earned cash stinks like garbage. They find that it won't buy a thing they either want or need on Judgment Day. They tripped on money and fell into sin, proud and pretentious with their jewels. They deck out their vile and vulgar fineries that are ungodly in finery. I'll make those god obscenities to a stench in their nostrils. Obscenities in the eyes of God, I will make them a stench in their nostrils. I'll give away their religious junk. Strangers, idols. I'll give away their, idolatrous tchotchkes. I'll throw them into the. Strangers will pick it up for free. The godless spit on it and make jokes. I'll turn my face against them so I won't have to look as my treasured place and people are violated. Well, this is also about the exile, the Jews of the exile. This is also about the destruction of the first temple. It has a double meanings. It has like meanings for the past and for the future. It's a prophecy also regarding what had happened during the destruction of the first temple, and also for the end times. A they look for peace, disaster on the clamor for the prophet. Yeah, this is more about the destruction of the first temple, but it also applies to the end times, as far as the money and the idols and idolatry. All of that will be utterly destroyed. All right, it applies to what had happened during the destruction of the first temple, and it also applies to end times, to the arrival of the Mashiach. Anyway, that's where I'm going to end it.
All right then. Thank you
That-
for the economics lesson.
All right, no problem. My pleasure.
All right.
And I'll post this to my Facebook.
Okay. I've already shared it.
Oh, you have? Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right.
Enjoy the rest of your day there, Claire.
You too.
And
You too, sir.
tell your family, tell your parents, tell everybody there that it's not about being paranoid or being fanatical or being wound up like a spring. Just take precautions. Don't have too much invested in the banking system, and if you can, get your money out of the European or English banking system and put it away in the East, or in countries that are they're transitioning over to this
Mhm.
new system. A lot of Westerners will look for refuge in this new system that's being built right now that might survive the calamity of what's going to happen in the West. So I wouldn't say put your eggs in one basket. Just try to have less of it in the Western banking system. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm. Mhm.
All right. So, ciao. Take it
Ciao.
easy. Bye.
You too. Bye.